and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Navigating Programmatic Advertising for Brands in Sensitive Industries. My name is Alexandra Pontikis, and I'm part of the marketing team here at StackAdapt. And with that, I would like to tell you a little bit about StackAdapt. So essentially, we're an award-winning self-serve programmatic advertising platform. We're a demand-side platform that is used by both agencies and brands alike. This is a place where ad buyers plan, execute, and manage data-driven digital advertising campaign across all devices, inventory, and publisher partners. And it's the platform that very much rely on AI and machine learning, and that's what really helps us build up a hyper-personalized user experience. So if you'd like to find out more about us, do not hesitate to visit our website, StackAdapt.com. And with that, I'll hand it over to our presenter, Jason and Chris. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Alex. So as mentioned, we are your presenters today. My name is Chris Wilson. I'm an account manager in the UK team of StackAdapt based out of London, and I've been here since February 2022.
Hi everybody, good morning. My name is Jason. I work on the sales enablement team here at StackAdapt. I'm based in Dublin and I joined StackAdapt in June of last year.
Thanks, Jason. So on the agenda today, we're going to go through the sensitive industry landscape in general, look at some recommended targeting strategies for some of those key verticals, what those targeting strategies actually mean through StackAdapt and how they work, an important one on how to stay compliant before going through some recommended channels for sensitive verticals, and then we'll wrap up, which will take about half an hour in total before we then go through our Q&A section. But for now, I'll pass you back to Jason.
Great, so thank you, Chris. So starting off with the sensitive industry landscape. So what actually is it? So, well, in terms of definition, we would define it as a sensitive industry as a business that offers products or services that have its consumption and or public information regulated by the government. So in terms of how we might identify them, they might be considered a taboo topic in society. It might not allowed to be consumed by people under a certain age. So for example, alcohol may negatively impact people's health and safety. So for example, maybe nicotine, and also its commercialization may be heavily regulated. So maybe finance. So moving on then, this is a quote from our Director of Platform Quality, Connie. So I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to read through it there. So a couple of key things to note here. Advertisers and marketers really need to be paying attention to changes within their vertical, since regulations are constantly shifting and every vertical plays by different rules. So it's really, really important to be aware. There's also a need to work with platforms that take sensitive advertising seriously, as not all of them out there do. And a good example here, recent announcement in terms of changing rules and regulations. So some of you may or may not be aware, but for example, the Belgian government has decided on a landmark decision to ban gambling advertising across multiple platforms from July 1st later this year. And that's all in a bid to crack down on addiction and debt. And there's going to be a further prohibition on ads in stadiums and sports sponsorships coming at a later date. And then moving on and looking at sensitive industries and more specifically. So I've mentioned some of these already, but they can range from sensitive goods and services to industries with more stringent advertising regulations. So therefore, sensitive categories do require some additional attention. And if you are planning on a campaign, the following are some sensitive brand categories to keep in mind. So from adult alcohol and nicotine, finance, healthcare, gambling, CBD, and weight loss. And then moving on and looking at market trends. So if we look at each of the industries mentioned, all are projected to grow significantly this year and show increases in revenue on 2022. So looking at a couple of these then in isolation, so gambling. So last year, the number of people who gambled online in the UK was estimated at approximately 13.2 million. And 80% of those were adults aged between 25 and 54. And these same cohort had reported they'd gambled at least once in the previous 12 months. The vast majority, so 90%, reported having gambled on sports betting and casino or gaming sites, and 8% reported having taken part in lotteries, and 3% reported experiencing betting exchanges or peer-to-peer exchanges within that given 12-month period. And around 79% of adult gamblers who took part in the research described themselves as recreational gamblers rather than experts or problem gamblers trying to make money from their activities, whilst 71% overall considered themselves to be in control when it came to their gambling behavior. And then looking at the alcohol and nicotine verticals, so the largest market in Europe for alcoholic beverages is the UK. 3.7% of global revenue of alcoholic beverages will be generated through online sales in 2023. So still quite a relatively low percentage, but that again is projected to increase year over year. Wine is predicted to bring in the most revenue in Europe with just under 39%, followed by beer at 38% and spirits at just over 20%. In looking at nicotine, in tobacco, the largest tobacco segment is cigarettes with 84.4% of 2023 expected revenue, followed by smoking tobacco, which is just under 10%, e-cigarettes 3.8%, and cigars at 1.9%. And interestingly, the global e-cig and the vape market size was valued at just over 21 billion euro in 2022, and that's expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 30.6% from 2023 to 2030. I'm going to move over to Chris now, who's going to talk you through some recommended targeting strategies.
Thanks, Jason. I guess before I do, I was actually really surprised by that low stat in regards to the share of vaping. I thought that would have been a lot higher, but yeah, as Jason has outlined, I guess during a time where a lot of industries are seeing a fairly large downturn in revenue, a lot of sensitive verticals are seeing quite the opposite. So quite an important space to be in from a media perspective at the moment. And yeah, so we'll now go into recommended targeting strategies. So we'll cover some challenges initially before going into a few of the recommended strategies per vertical. So one of the key challenges is producing creative ads that stand out but also still remain compliant. So that's something that StackAdapt's Creative Studio solutions team is well versed in and very much experts in creating those highly engaging ads while sticking to the rules. Keeping up with restrictions that are constantly changing and can vary depending on the region. So as Jason outlined earlier, with that gambling regulation, or complete advertising ban coming in Belgium in the middle of the year. I guess the next point, proving offline sales lift from online tactics isn't necessarily a challenge just for sensitive verticals, but all verticals in general. Precise targeting to reach desired and allowed age and geo audiences. So taking, for example, alcohol, we obviously can't advertise to anyone under the age of 18, keeping up to date with looming privacy laws, and doing all that whilst remaining or ensuring that we are running across high quality inventory. So now I'll go through a few of the key verticals and look at some examples for targeting strategies. So I won't go through all four for each of them. So I'll go through a couple of examples, but as Alex mentioned, if you have any questions or want to cover anything in particular that I don't look at, just please drop it in the chat and we'll look to cover that after the call. So looking at custom segments. So for alcohol, an example here is we can create a custom segment based on content that users have been consuming. One campaign that I ran recently was targeting users that have been consuming content related to cocktail making specifically for Prosecco brands. So just one highly effective example to use there. Then for our third-party targeting, so we have a large range of partnerships with all the major data providers, and we can test and run those, utilize those pre-built audience segments for for audiences such as beer drinkers, as an example for alcohol campaigns. Moving on to finance now. So I'll use location targeting as one example. So for a bank, you can competitor conquest other banks, and users have been seen there frequently on multiple occasions. Or then you can go a bit larger and look at just financial hubs in general. So you could look to target Canary Wharf in London as one example, and Wall Street over in New York. So two examples you can use there for location targeting. So, and then you have first party targeting is quite a common one and popular one for financial campaigns. So most finance, whether it's bank or a trading brand, do typically have large numbers, large lists of consumer data based on whoever has used those brands. So one popular one is targeting a list of users who are considered lapsed. So people who haven't made a deposit or a transaction over a certain period of time, and then re-engaging those users, and leveraging our creative studios, we can then tailor a specific creative with a message to focus directly at those people to bring them back to that brand. So gambling, another large one. So an example of contextual targeting, which would be targeting users across content in real time. So looking at targeting inventory related to articles about live odds as one example. And then a popular one I've run a few times is people consuming fantasy sports articles. So one example of using that real-time contextual targeting. And then lookalike targeting is a strong one for gambling. So utilizing website and pixel data to create a lookalike model based on a previous depositor for a betting firm. Moving on to healthcare. So, for example, dynamic retargeting using a customized creative, and I'll take you through a specific example in the next section. But customize a creative to serve ads based on specific products that people have been looking at on the website, and retarget them to bring them back to the website and make that final purchase based on, as I said, those specific creatives. And then location targeting seems quite simple, but users who have been frequently seen at gyms as a good example there for healthcare campaigns. CBD campaigns, as Jason outlined, very, very large growth area these days. So looking at contextual targeting, also keeping it quite simple, is people consuming content related to CBD products. So high relevancy there, and a large amount of reach these days. And then a very important one for CBD campaigns are PMPs. So CBD campaigns and products do need to run across pre-approved content and publishers. So we'll need to have PMP, private marketplace deals, implemented on campaigns, and that's something your client services team will of course help out with throughout the entire process. But as I mentioned, very, very important one to be compliant for CBD campaigns. Now I'll go through how a lot of those are built and how they actually work to make a bit more sense of what I've gone through there. Looking specifically at PCAI, so this is a StackAdapt proprietary solution, and one we are quite proud of. So this is a real-time cookieless solution, so sustainable for when that cookieless world does eventually come in. And it uses real-time targeting and AI combination to reach users across who are reading that relevant content, but also kind of expands on that a little bit. And if you look over on that towards the right side of the screen initially, so the product example here using whiskey, so we'll make sure running across content that includes whiskey, drink, premium, but then use out of context phrases to make sure we don't run across anything we don't want to be associated with, such as alcohol abuse and health problems related to alcohol. So keep it in a positive environment as possible. And if I move back towards the left side of the screen for our PCAI, before I do that, the PCAI solution doesn't necessarily stick exactly to those 4 key phrases, that expands on it even further. So maximizing reach, but staying relevant. So using whiskey again as an example, as we can find users who are also consuming content related to premium bourbon or Japanese whiskey as an example. So uses the AI to maximize relevancy and reach. So now moving over to the stats over on the left side of the page. So PCAI, although it might not have as high engagement in terms of clicks and interaction as some of our other targeting strategies, it is really effective for driving those on-site actions from the target audience. And as outlined by the 21% of sensitive vertical campaigns, page context AI outperforms retargeting even when it comes to ECPA, which is effective cost per acquisition, which can range from actual sales on site, page lands, something simple, or lead generation and this type of stuff. So, typically your client services team will not only recommend having one PCAI audience to run across and test, but 2 or more because of how effective it is for gaining those on-site conversions. Our other contextual targeting solution is keyword rule targeting, otherwise known as KRT. So this is more simplified, where it doesn't have that AI function associated to it, and it's more of that exact match rule. So using this example here, we'd combine 2 different rules and only run across content that combines someone consuming content of both throat and relief, or cough and soothe, just to maximize relevancy. So it doesn't quite have that reach, because it doesn't have, like as PCAI, because it doesn't have that AI expanding on the audience there, but it has that max relevancy. So it still has similar results in terms of gaining those on-site conversions, but yeah, more of that exact match. So location retargeting, so I gave some examples in the previous section. So, looking at, people who've been to gyms or banks and these kinds of things. So they're more examples of hyper-local targeting. We can, of course, focus on larger areas. So if you're looking at country, region, city, and then the radius. So depending on each brand, our customer service or customer solutions team would love to work on specific strategies based on specific brands and briefs to tailor location solutions specifically to each brand. And then dynamic retargeting. So again, I did say I would cover this in more detail in this section. So this uses that healthcare example of a CBD brand. And so what it does, we use pixel data to create buckets of users based on what specific products they've been looking at on websites. So taking this HD CBD tincture product specifically into example, anyone who has viewed that product but hasn't made that purchase on site will then be served an ad and dynamically have that image and price pulled into it, and that changes based on whatever product, whatever different product the users have been looking at. So this is something our creative solutions and client services team work quite closely on building, and as you can probably see, due to the relevance and maximum relevancy of it, we tend to see really strong conversion results to bring users back to the website and complete that final action. And now I'll just pass you back to Jason to talk about how to stay compliant.
Nice one, thank you, Chris. So how do we stay compliant? Well, there are a few things to keep aware of which may seem self-explanatory, but nonetheless, they are worth calling out. So first and foremost, being aware of the laws in your country and region. So policies can vary, as we're well aware, depending on your location. So it's important to be on top of these and know the differences between different regions. Keeping up to date with evolving rules and regulations. So many rules are specific to each vertical, and they do tend to change on a regular basis. So again, important to keep on top of that. Knowing the types of content and copy that can be used in your creatives. So there are many do's and don'ts, red flags, etc., that do need to be followed and adhered to or avoided. And then finding the right partners that are up to date with these regulations. And you need these partners as well to supply quality inventory with transparent reporting, and also ideally have a team of quality experts to help guide you with any specific queries around this. So moving on in terms of how to remain compliant as well. So having a compliant campaign from the start, it does set you up for success. So there's a couple of key things here we can look at. So the use of creative tactics. So this can help you change creatives in a single campaign based on location. So that allows you to deliver different messaging to multiple geos that all comply with the local government guidelines. The use of third-party data, so leveraging third-party data to access precise audience segments within your key demographics. So whether you're looking to target a specific age range, gender, location, income level, etc. So this all helps ensure you're targeting the correct and compliant audience. And then lastly here, like quality check. So the use of quality check services to make sure your ads are following all content and technical guidelines prior to any campaign launch. And then moving on to looking at how StackAdapt can help. So yeah, how can we help you stay compliant? Like it's really, really important to get this right, obviously. So the StackAdapt team is there every step of the way to ensure a seamless process in that regard. And we've got loads and loads of teams involved, but some of the main ones involved here with client services, platform quality, and inventory and partnerships as well. So these teams can help with a number of things. So first off, like subject matter expertise. So again, you've got a lot of experts here that can provide solutions to ensure you're targeting people in a compliant manner. Brand safety and ad quality staying top of mind. So teams here to help reinforce all brand safety efforts and fraud prevention by reducing and eliminating the risk of any non-compliant ads within the ecosystem. Another important one, quick approval time to market. So all the while helping to reduce any manual and reactionary troubleshooting of any campaigns. Review and validation by a highly experienced team. So the team here can help to verify that every ad going through the platform meets our content guidelines and has the StackAdapt seal of approval. Easy onboarding process as well, really important. So the team can help address performance issues related to compliance prior to any campaign launch, and they can do this very, very quickly and efficiently. And then lastly as well, the serve-through rate. So ensuring technical and content compliance at all times. And then moving back to Chris, talk about recommended channels.
Thanks, Jason. So yeah, I'll take you through a few of the key channels and then how they all kind of link together as an overall marketing funnel. Initially, I'll talk about native. So key things about the native format. Well, I guess StackAdapt was a native first platform, so that's how StackAdapt did start out. So we are experts in this channel specifically, of course. So some key things on it, though, it is more of a discrete ad format. So in that sense, it does, I guess, like cause a lower engagement rate or drive a lower engagement rate compared to other channels. But then the benefit of that is those who do engage typically are of more high quality. So it's driving that high quality traffic to the website and yeah, essentially just trying to drive those online conversions on site actions. So I guess this could be considered that focus towards that lower funnel. And as this example shows, there isn't a whole lot of animation or interaction. So with the CBD example, it is quite straightforward. Just the image, your headline, and then your description as well. And a lot of this will appear across more news-related content and embedded amongst different articles that users can click through to. So as a result, often recommended to have the click-through of these creatives to a blog page or an information or article on a website, so it does kind of fit in with the nature of the ad. And so in contrast to the discrete ad, we do then have our display solutions. So as I'm sure you might have felt when I did scroll on here, that these ads are far more engaging and high impact. So yeah, we do have those animations going through, and these three different formats give us some good examples here. So if I look at the high tide carousel display, this is a classic carousel, and this literally just scrolls through the different product options for high tide, and yeah, tries to display a few different things to make sure we show as much as possible to that target audience and give them as many reasons to bring them to the site and click on that shop now button. The jackpot slots is a fairly classic dynamic ad example. So something as simple as just coins falling down the screen naturally brings the attention of that target audience, much different to a native format, and which drives that higher engagement. And then the carousel display is for the positions ad, the last one over on the right. Is a really good example of what I was talking about earlier with having that highly engaging ad while sticking to the rules. So this is obviously definitely a sensitive vertical example ad, and yeah, so it's a slightly different carousel, so it doesn't have that scrolling product, but that alternating image to grab the attention. And so the creative solutions team built this in a way that, I guess, the language that we've used through the presentation, a taboo solution or taboo product is gaining that attention while sticking to the rules, which is very important. And the final channel I'll take you through is video. So as I guess it says on the tin, this is utilizing a video asset similar to traditional TV or any other channels that you might have used already. And yeah, just trying to really drive that large-scale brand awareness and reach. So displaying as much as you can about your product and solution to that target audience within a 15 to 30 second time slot, and then just try to reach as many people as possible. Doesn't necessarily drive as strong a response in terms of those on-site actions, though it can still play a part in that regard, but it's definitely that top funnel, upper funnel brand awareness piece to then filter down throughout display and native being that middle to lower funnel. And this is how you essentially complete that full funnel approach to a marketing campaign. So based on, I guess, depending on budget, would typically recommend going with all three of these channels for most campaigns. But yeah, those are all the channels I want to take you through. And now I'll pass you back to Jason for the wrap up.
Nice one, thank you, Chris. So to wrap up, if there's three key things to take away from here, and three things you need to remember. So first and foremost, double checking the rules and regulations prior to launch. So as we've sort of a recurring theme throughout today has been the rules are constantly changing. And non-compliant ads can have a detrimental impact on the perceived success of any advertising campaign. So it's really, really important to be fully aware and double checking all rules and regulations prior to any campaign launch. Diversifying as well. So, and again, Chris has talked you through those today. So there's multiple channels and tactics that can be leveraged to increase the reach of sensitive brand ads. So it's important to not just pigeonhole yourself to one, but using multiple options there is key to success. And then lastly, don't break the rules, but there is no harm in being a bit creative. So finding that balance between those creative ads that catch the attention of your target audience, but also are following all of the regulations that we need to adhere to. So they're the three key things in terms of taking away from today. And that actually concludes the bulk of our presentation. So I believe now we'll move to a Q&A.
Thank you, Chris and Jason. Yes, indeed, we'll jump into the Q&A portion of the webinar and open up the floor to any questions. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please place them in the questions box of the GoToWebinar panel. So there are already several questions coming through. So just a heads up, if we're not able to get to yours today, not to worry, we'll follow up directly with you after the webinar. So just to start, how long does StackAdapt take to review a campaign before it can go live? What does sensitive onboarding entail, and how long does it usually take?
Thank you, Alex. I'll take those questions, and they link together quite well. So how long does the review process take is the first question. That is actually fairly quick. So after a campaign has launched, quite often have our platform quality team review that within an hour. I've rarely seen a approval process take longer than 2 hours after launching that campaign. But I guess that links into that next question is related to that sensitive onboarding. all the onboarding needs to be complete for sensitive verticals before a PQ team would actually approve that after launch. So if the onboarding hadn't been completed and the campaign was launched, it would be rejected quickly, but it would be rejected in the platform. So the onboarding, what isn't tailored, so that does depend on the vertical. And your client services team and representatives will walk you through that entire process, as you know, they are well versed in all the sensitive verticals. Typically comes down to providing licensing and a review of website from our PQ team. But yeah, that does depend on each vertical, and you know, the exact details for each brand of what is needed will be provided clearly, and then typically can take anywhere between 1 to 7 days to go through that full onboarding process. And once it is verified before the first campaign, you typically then wouldn't need to go through that again unless anything major changes with the company or the brand. But once it's complete, you'd be able to then launch as many campaigns as you'd like after that.
Thank you. That was super insightful. And I have another question coming in. How do you, can you share what sort of sensitive verticals you are working with right now and any specific clients?
Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, unfortunately, we can't name specific clients, unfortunately. It's probably for reasons well aware, but to be honest, we are running with clients across a number of those sensitive verticals, a lot of which we've mentioned today. So I would estimate the main ones that we're seeing are in finance, CBD, gambling, and alcohol as well. So we do definitely have several different clients running across those verticals, but unfortunately can't name any more specifics. But yeah, definitely are running with clients within those verticals.
Thank you. And how do we combat exchanges that prohibit certain verticals like gaming or alcohol, for example?
Yeah, it's not all exchanges will allow things, yeah, like alcohol or gaming. So not all of the exchanges out there actually do allow ads there. Now it's great. We won't have that problem here. So at StackAdapt, we're plugged into over 40 of the main supply and real-time bidding exchanges. So that means we'll be able to get your ad in front of the audience that you want to get it in front of, because we're plugged into so many of them. It doesn't really impact too badly on campaigns at all, really, if there's 1 or 2 exchanges that don't allow those specific verticals. So there'll be no issues with scale or reach or actually getting your ad in front of the right person at the right time and who you want to target.
Thank you, Jason. We have another question. Can we target potential customers who have been seen on competitors' websites?
I can take that one. Thanks, Alex. So very good question, actually. So I guess isn't a limitation specifically towards StackAdapt. It's just kind of digital advertising in general. You can't necessarily target users that we know have been on competitive websites, as that would require a pixel being placed. And even if StackAdapt or another supplier was able to, or did work with that and did have a supplier or with that competitor and did have a pixel on site, it would be against privacy to then use that pixel for other brands and competitors. But there are other solutions I guess you could look at. So you could, so if that competitor does have programmatic inventory on their website, you could then run a curated site list campaign, whereas you bid on inventory on that website in real time, or you could use browsing custom segments or contextual solutions to reach users who've been consuming content related to those competitors, or reading content in real time about those competitors. So there are a few different approaches you can take, but target users who had been to websites, been to competitive websites specifically, isn't necessarily isn't exactly possible, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Chris. And one last question. We have time for one more question. Is it possible to use in-game for sensitive verticals?
I can take that one as well, Alex. Thank you. So it is possible, yes, but so in-game is on a case-by-case basis. So each of those campaigns would need to go through, I guess, it would have to go through, I guess, a sub onboarding process, even if it's already been approved by the PQ team or platform quality team. So because it is in that specific environment, we would then need to speak to our partners for that in-game inventory, and we'd need to just make sure it's okay to run across that. So no guarantees that we could, but we can run it, but we'd need to go through the correct channels to make sure it's compliant and it can run.
Okay, thank you both. Amazing. So that sort of concludes our Q&A portion. Thank you so much once again, Chris and Jason. And that really concludes today's webinar. So thank you all for attending today. We hope you found it both informative and insightful. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with a recording to all registrants. Please don't hesitate again to reach out with any other questions you may have. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.